When will our suffering end? It's a question that echoes through the corridors of every human heart at some point in life. We all experience suffering in various forms: loss, disappointment, illness, loneliness, betrayal, and countless other trials that weigh heavy on our souls. These moments of intense pain make us question everything: our purpose, our faith, and even the very nature of God. But what if I told you that there is a promise, a divine assurance that can truly lift us up, even in the darkest of times? Join me as we dive deep into this profound question and explore the hope that is promised to us by God. Suffering is a universal human experience, yet it is one of the most isolating feelings in the world. When we are in the midst of it, it feels like no one can truly understand the depth of our pain. We may be surrounded by loved ones, yet still feel completely alone. The weight of our circumstances can be so overwhelming that it feels as though we are being crushed under the burden. It's in these moments that we cry out to God, asking, "Why me? Why now? When will this end?" But what if the isolation we feel is not meant to push us away from others or from God, but rather to draw us closer to Him? What if our suffering is a sacred space where God meets us, where He whispers His promises to our hearts, where He offers us a lifeline in the midst of the storm? There are times in our lives when suffering feels like it's going to consume us. The weight of our circumstances can be so heavy that we feel like we can't breathe, like we're drowning in a sea of despair. We may find ourselves questioning God's presence, His goodness, and His love. We wonder why He isn't intervening, why He isn't taking away our pain. It's in these moments that our faith is tested the most. But it's also in these moments that God's promises become our lifeline. He doesn't always take away our pain immediately, but He promises to be with us in it. He promises to carry us when we can't carry ourselves. He promises to bring us through the fire and the storm, to the other side where hope and healing await. We've all experienced those sleepless nights when our minds are racing, our hearts are heavy, and the tears just won't stop. We've all had those days when it feels like the pain will never end, when it feels like we're walking through a valley of shadows with no light in sight. In these moments, it's easy to lose hope, to lose faith, to believe that things will never get better. But the truth is, we're not alone in our suffering. The Bible is full of stories of people who have walked through similar struggles. People who have cried out to God in their pain, people who have doubted His goodness, people who have felt like giving up. And in these stories we find not only a reflection of our own struggles, but also a source of hope and encouragement. One of the most powerful stories of suffering in the Bible is the story of Job. Job was a man who had everything: wealth, family, health, and a deep faith in God. But in an instant, all of it was taken away from him. He lost his children, his health, and his wealth. His friends turned against him, and he was left with nothing but his pain and his questions. Job cried out to God, demanding answers. He wanted to know why he was suffering, why everything he held dear had been taken from him. But instead of giving Job answers, God gave him something far more valuable: a promise. God promised Job that He was with him, that He cared for him, and that He would bring him through the darkness. And in that promise, Job found the strength to keep going. He found the hope to keep believing, even when everything around him seemed hopeless. Job's story is a testament to the endurance of faith in the midst of suffering. It reminds us that even when we don't understand why we are going through what we are going through, we can trust that God is with us, that He sees our pain, and that He will bring us through it. The Psalms are another powerful source of comfort and hope in times of suffering. They are filled with the raw emotions of people who are struggling, who are crying out to God in their pain. The Psalms are full of laments, complaints, doubts, and fears. But they are also full of promises, assurances, and declarations of faith. One of the most famous Psalms is Psalm 23, which says, "Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. This verse is a powerful reminder that God is with us, even in the darkest of times. It's a promise that He will comfort us, that He will guide us, and that He will bring us through. When we read the Psalms, we see that we are not alone in our suffering. We see that people throughout history have walked through similar struggles, and they have found hope in God's promises. The Psalms remind us that it's okay to cry out to God, to express our doubts and fears, and to trust that He hears us and that He will answer. I want to share a personal testimony with you, a time in my life when I was going through a really tough season. I had lost someone I loved, and I was struggling to come to terms with the pain. I felt like I was walking through a dark forest with no light in sight. The weight of my grief was overwhelming, and I didn't know if I would ever find my way out. But then, in the midst of my pain, I stumbled upon a verse in the Bible that changed everything for me. It was Romans 8:28, which says, "And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good, for those who are called according to His purpose." This verse became my lifeline. It reminded me that my suffering wasn't in vain, that God was working everything out for my good, even though I couldn't see it at the time. In that moment, I found hope. I found the strength to keep going, to keep trusting, and to keep believing. I realized that God's promise to us is that He will bring us through our suffering. He will bring us through the fire, and He will bring us through the storm. He will bring us through the valley of shadows, and He will bring us into the light. God's promise to us is not that we will never suffer, but that He will be with us in our suffering. He promises to never leave us or forsake us, no matter how dark or difficult our circumstances may be. This promise is found throughout the Bible, in both the Old and New Testaments. In Deuteronomy 31:6, God says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid or terrified because of them, for the Lord your God goes with you. He will never leave you, nor forsake you." This promise was given to the Israelites as they were about to enter the Promised Land, facing enemies and challenges that seemed insurmountable. But God assured them that they would not face these challenges alone. He would be with them, guiding and protecting them every step of the way. This same promise is given to us today. No matter what we are going through, God is with us. He is our ever-present help in times of trouble. He is our refuge and our strength. And because of this, we can face whatever comes our way with courage and confidence, knowing that we are not alone. While God's presence is our greatest comfort in times of suffering, He also provides us with another source of strength, the community of believers. When we are going through difficult times, it's important to surround ourselves with people who can support us, pray for us, and remind us of God's promises. In Galatians 6:2, we are instructed to carry each other's burdens, and in this way, you will fulfill the law of Christ. This verse reminds us that we are not meant to walk through our suffering alone. We are called to support one another, to lift each other up, and to be a source of encouragement and strength for those who are struggling. If you are going through a tough time right now, I encourage you to reach out to someone you trust. Share your struggles with them, and allow them to walk alongside you on your journey. And if you know someone who is suffering, take the time to reach out to them, offer your support, and remind them of God's love and promises. Want to leave you with a message of hope. I want to remind you that your suffering is not in vain. I want to remind you that God is with you, that He cares for you, and that He will bring you through. Don't give up, don't lose faith, and don't lose hope. In the book of Isaiah, God gives us a beautiful promise. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Isaiah 43:2. This is a powerful reminder that no matter what we face, whether it feels like we are drowning in deep waters or being consumed by fiery trials, God is with us. He is our protector, our deliverer, and our refuge. But what does it mean to hold on to hope in the midst of suffering? It means trusting that God's promises are true, even when our circumstances seem to say otherwise. It means believing that God is at work in our lives, even when we can't see it. It means finding strength in His word, comfort in His presence, and encouragement in His people. Hope is not just a feeling, it's a choice. It's a decision to focus on God's promises rather than our problems. It's a decision to trust that He is in control, even when life feels out of control. And it's a decision to keep moving forward, one step at a time, knowing that God is guiding us every step of the way. One of the most comforting truths about suffering is that it is temporary. No matter how dark or difficult our circumstances may be, they will not last forever. The Bible tells us that weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. Psalm 30 verse 5. This means that there is light at the end of the tunnel, even if we can't see it right now. Our suffering may feel overwhelming at times, but we can find comfort in the knowledge that it is not the end of our story. God has a plan and a purpose for our lives, and He is working all things together for our good. Romans 8:28. We may not understand why we are going through what we are going through, but we can trust that God does. And we can trust that He will bring us through it, stronger and more resilient than before. As you walk through your own journey of suffering, remember that your story can be a source of strength and encouragement for others. When we share our struggles and how God has brought us through them, we give others hope that they too can make it through their own challenges. If you've been through a season of suffering, I encourage you to share your story in the comments below. Let's lift each other up, let's encourage one another, and let's remind each other of God's promises. Your story could be the very thing that someone else needs to hear to keep going, to keep trusting, and to keep believing. As we conclude this message, I want to leave you with a final reminder: your suffering is not in vain. God is with you, He loves you, and He has a plan for your life. No matter what you are going through, know that you are not alone. God is walking with you, carrying you, and guiding you through the storm. Don't give up, don't lose faith, and don't lose hope. Hold on to God's promises, lean on His strength, and trust in His timing. He will bring you through this, and when He does, you will look back and see how He was with you every step of the way. Thank you for joining me today. If you found this message encouraging, I invite you to subscribe to my channel for more content on finding peace and hope through faith. And if you need prayer or support, please don't hesitate to reach out in the comments. We are a community, and we are here to lift each other up. May God bless you and keep you, and may you find hope and healing in His promises. I'll see you in the next video.